Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Doug Hepburn of Hepburn Financial Advisors, a boutique wealth management firm located in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. We've been helping executives, business owners, and independent women successfully navigate financial change throughout their lives for the last 20 years. I'd like to welcome my co-host, Robin Bond of Transition Strategies, a team of tenacious lawyers effectively advocating for their clients at every stage of the employment relationship.
Thank you.
How you doing, Robin?
I'm happy to be here as always. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Is there anything new in your world?
Oh, you always ask that. Well, I just put out my newsletter, and in it I did an article about the new New Jersey pay transparency law, which takes effect in less than 30 days, June 1st. It takes effect in New Jersey for anyone who either lives or works in New Jersey. Employers of 10 or more employees for 20 or more weeks in a year now have to disclose the hourly wage or the salary range in both internal or external job postings, as well as anything that is related, like benefits or compensation for the employee.
Interesting. So, I guess for the longest time, it was kind of taboo to talk to your colleagues about what you were earning, what they were earning, and does that change anything now?
Well, the National Labor Relations Act permits employees to discuss terms and conditions of employment, which includes salary, of course. But
Right.
what you can't, if you're a manager level, you're not allowed to discuss that with the non-manager level people. But the manager level people are, under the National Labor Relations Act, always allowed to discuss terms and conditions of employment. This is going to make it easier for manager level people as well now to understand what the pay range is for a particular job.
Right.
A corollary to this, Doug, in some cities, in some states, now it's illegal to ask someone when they're interviewing for a job, but what did you make at your last job?
Right.
And that's because, what difference does it make? If in my last job I was an associate director and this job would be director level, last job I managed 2 people, I would manage 10 in this job. It doesn't matter what I did in that last job. What matters is what I'm going to do in this job. So disclose to me the pay range for this job, right? And pay me fairly for the job I'm doing, not unfairly because of the last job that I held.
Right. What's on the table now, not what you left.
Right. That's right. So, hopefully this will be helpful. And there has been a trend in some industries to just say, look, in some pharmaceutical companies, especially, to just say, post the salary range, put it out there. And then only people who are willing to work within that salary range will apply in the first place. And I think that will be helpful. And as you said, enables people to feel, all right, well, I'm being paid fairly. This is the range. This is what they're offering me. And to kind of remove that impediment from the table.
Now, is New Jersey unique in passing that law, or is this common or becoming more commonplace throughout the country?
I don't really know how many states have done that. I really can't say about that pay transparency.
Right. Well, there's 50
sure
of them, so I wouldn't expect you to be an expert on all of them. But
if you went to Google and said, how many pay transparency laws, people talk about it, like legislators talk about it, but actually getting it through, a state Senate, a state House, and through a governor, I don't think there's too many of these laws that are actually on the books right now.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's can be tough to get that through. Well, we've seen a lot of unusual things happening in the market. A lot of volatility lately, and
how are we doing today?
Well, you know what? That's a great question. We're
I'm like
fluctuating.
every day. I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Whenever there's market volatility, there's always people are always trying to point to rationale for it. And in previous episodes, I had mentioned that markets had a tendency to be overpriced because we had at one point the 38% of the S&P 500's value was driven by the 10 largest companies.
Yeah.
And we hadn't seen anything like that since the tech wreck back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so, in my opinion, the market was a bit overvalued and really looking for an excuse to sell off. And of course, the current administration, the media provided that with, we're going to hell in a handbasket with tariffs. But I think a lot of that has sort of rebounded, and we're starting to see some rationality come back to the markets. Currently, the markets have been starting to stabilize, but I think what we're going to see is things returning to a bit normal. I mean, the economy seems to be in good shape, so I think that's we have good things to look forward to.
You have to keep an eye on the job thing too, the job availability, because frankly, factory jobs and picking fruit type jobs are not exactly what is going to drive the economy forward. So I'm watching that, and I'm watching that pretty carefully, but who knows what's going to happen once these tariff deals get either in place or not in place, whichever way they're going to go.
Right.
Then I think finally companies will be able to plan. Right now, they don't know. Should they hire? Should they lay off? People are either frozen, or I'm seeing a lot of layoff mode. So I'm with you. Let's get this market back on track and
get through the uncertainty.
Forward, yeah, move us all forward. Please move us all forward.
Yeah. Well, speaking of moving forward, we have a viewer question from Grace Toms of Philadelphia. What are the child labor laws that apply to driving or delivering goods? I'm guessing she either is a child or she knows somebody who's a child who's driving or delivering goods. Do you have any insights on that?
Sure. Grace, thanks for asking. In Pennsylvania, driving and delivering goods is considered a potentially hazardous occupation for minors under the age of 18. So generally, employees under the age of 18 can't drive, but they can serve as outside helpers on a motor vehicle on public roads. So that's really not a job for minors. There is an exception here about 17-year-olds being allowed to drive vehicles under a 6,000 pound gross weight for a very limited portion of their drive. But they're not allowed to be put in time-sensitive delivery roles or driving at night roles, okay? Because again, they're minors that can't work in a dangerous job, or that could be injurious to them or to others. Anybody that is going to work, all minors have to have a written statement from a parent or guardian acknowledging their work duties and hours and granting this permission to work. And they also have to have a signed permit from their school. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it raises another question, because it seems like a lot of the law is centered around motor vehicles, but I see these drivers for delivery, fast food delivery, that are using bikes, e-bikes, motorcycles, mopeds. And so, obviously anything that's motorized, that would fall under that. But I mean, could somebody do that on a bike? That's probably an interesting question.
Yeah, I don't know. I imagine people were trying anything, people will try anything, but.
Right. Well, thanks, Grace, for sending that in. If there's something you'd like to ask, here's how to send your questions to the show.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says Send Us Your Questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T.
So for many people, retirement is either a dream or a goal. And as some would put it, clients are either retiring from something or retiring to something. To explore this subject, our guest, Aaron Cirksena, founder of MDRN Capital, is here to discuss it. Hi, Aaron. Welcome to the show.
How's it going, Doug? Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Aaron.
Thanks for being here. So what inspired you to start MDRN Capital, and how's your approach to retirement planning different from other traditional financial advisors?
Yeah, so it was actually, I had been numerous places throughout my career where I kept seeing the same sort of outdated cookie cutter advice that was being given to clients after having them take maybe a 5 or 10 question risk questionnaire. And I kept seeing the massive gaps that were being missed, where advisors were only focusing on the investment management piece for clients and charging them an advisory fee to do so. And a lot of times those approaches, the sort of traditional maybe 60-40 stock bond portfolio, just isn't working as well in today's day and age. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, when COVID happened, it really changed our approach to where rather than having to meet with clients only locally in person, we actually found out that our clients that we had preferred meeting with us over Zoom. And that was really when we started to expand to be sort of a nationwide firm, where now we have 20 plus advisors that are located all throughout the company that all work remotely, that are able to meet with clients all over the country.
Wow. So you mentioned something about misconceptions here. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about retirement planning?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions, and I see it in news headlines even all the time, is that it's about having some big or some specific number saved, right? You got to have $1 million saved. You got to have $2 million saved, whatever the number is. It's really not about any specific number. It's about having a specific amount of income that's tailored to your specific retirement, right? And your situation of what you need. Everybody's going to be different. For instance, people that might have pensions and Social Security might need less income from their assets. They might be okay and have a perfectly fine retirement with $500,000. Other people that might not be so fortunate to have pensions, like most of us in today's day and age, might have to have significantly more income coming from their portfolio. So I think it's not just about a number, and it's not just about being focused on growth only. You have to be focused on how are you going to generate income from your portfolio, and don't rely on the market to do the amount of heavy lifting that it's done for us the past 10, 15 years, honestly.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah.
You know, that's a good point, because a lot of people do sort of get caught up on that magic number, and it's not necessarily something that's critical to their goals and objectives. Now, you mentioned in the green room that you specialize in working with people who are 55 to 70 years old and have over $500,000 saved. What's special about people in that demographic for you?
Yeah, that's really our niche or our wheelhouse. And that's because people in that range are generally about 5 to 10 years out of retirement or already in retirement. And that is specifically our set of clients. It doesn't matter how much money somebody has. We focus and work exclusively with pre-retirees and retirees. So basically people that are making that sort of awkward, scary transition from being in the accumulation phase, where all they're focused on is saving and growing assets, to now having to worry about going into the decumulation phase or the distribution phase, where now they've got to turn that nest egg that they've saved into income for themselves in retirement. So they're worried about a lot of different things at that point, whether it's taxes, whether it's market risk and volatility or estate planning. So all of those things are aspects that we touch on and help clients with.
Well, what does modern retirement planning look like? I mean, how is it different from the retirement planning that, we've seen for the past 20 years or so?
Yeah. So first, we're not going to restrict ourselves to just using, say, stocks and bonds as our only investment vehicles, right? Like a lot of advisors are going to out there. We're going to have our eyes open to anything that might make sense. And first and foremost, we make our retirement plans about generating the income that people need. So the way that we go about creating plans is actually segmenting off the portion of our money that's going to be deriving our income, and then segmenting off the portion of our money that's going to really be more geared towards long-term growth. So we separate our portfolios out. We don't leave any investment options off the table. We look at lots of different things outside of just the bond universe when we're trying to find safety and income for clients. And also we incorporate tax planning, meeting with actual CPAs, filing of taxes for our clients, and estate planning and trust work. And all of that is included for clients.
Okay.
Well, that's interesting. In the lead in, we were talking about market volatility and the current market volatility in particular. How do you work with clients to help them understand that when the market is volatile, that they have nothing to be concerned about?
It's really about having a plan in place from the beginning, honestly, and making sure that somebody doesn't have too much of their money as they're going into retirement that's subject to any degree of market volatility or any risk. And it goes back to our planning philosophy of basically separating out clients' money into different buckets and giving those buckets different job descriptions. So we refer to people's protected bucket of money as their protected income bucket, because we're only using fully principally protected investments, and those investments are going to be where we're pulling the majority of our income from. So that way, when you do things in that manner, when the market goes through these bumps and these jitters like what it's going through right now, we're not getting the phone calls that a lot of advisors are, because they know that their income is going to be taken care of regardless of how the market is performing on any given day or month.
Okay. That's interesting. I've seen some of these investments in the past where they guarantee you a certain return. I'm not sure if that's one of the things you're talking about, but if I were going to be one of your clients, what would my process, what would the experience I would have be like working with Modern?
Yeah, so first, it's going to be very efficient, right? We're all virtual. You don't have to drive 30 minutes into the office and wait in traffic. You don't have to try and find parking in a parking lot to come up the elevator and wait in the waiting room. So you can book directly on our advisors' calendars. So everything is very streamlined and efficient. But more so than that, we take a very educational approach with clients. So we don't have any sort of selling pressure whatsoever. All of our advisors on staff are salaried employees of the company. So we're making sure that we're taking clients through an educational process when we're putting plans together for them, so that they get to have input in what they're comfortable with in a plan. And so that we're giving them options that talk about the pros and cons of every option. There's no perfect investment vehicle out there. So any plan is going to be made up of imperfect investment vehicles that we're trying to put together into a cohesive, sort of as close to perfect plan as we can for folks. But we want them to feel like they have a hand in that process.
That sounds great. It sounds great. Oftentimes though, I'm sure you probably run into clients that may object to a particular type of investment, whether it's a specific company or a specific type of product. How do you handle those objectives or objections, I should say?
I think that's where it really goes back to the educational process of not telling somebody what they have to have, and not telling somebody that they're wrong in feeling a certain way about an investment or a particular company, but more asking further questions on the subject, right? Of why do they feel that way? Has it just been things they've heard in the market or in the media? Has it been experiences of friends or family members that they've had? But what's causing them to feel the way that they do? And to make sure that they feel validated in that feeling, but also making sure to explain to them the actual true pros and cons of any vehicles that you are all talking about. I think that's the most important thing, because if somebody does truly understand the way that any investments work, they're going to then be able to make an educated decision for themselves of what they're comfortable with or what they're not comfortable with.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. And just a follow up. I mean, I think that sort of leads into the concept of holistic planning, because I know a lot of people would like to do that these days. A lot of people aren't doing it, but the idea is to be able to address a lot of those issues that are more than just money centered. Is that how you guys approach holistic planning?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's a shame that so many prospective clients or clients of existing financial advisors, when they think of a financial advisor, they think of it in the terms of investment management, right? It's somebody
Right.
who manages and invests my money for me, basically, so I don't have to worry about it. In today's day and age of retirement planning and financial planning, there's so much more that goes into it than just investment management. It's why we incorporate for
Absolutely.
all of our clients the CPA team that we have and the tax planning that we take them through, where we're not just filing their tax returns for them at the end of the year. Yes, we do that, but we're sitting down with them, with clients, and with our CPA team members and making sure that they're doing tax planning proactively throughout the year so that they can minimize their taxes when eventually they have to file in April. At the same time, it's the same thing with estate planning. It's something that very often clients are left to have to piece together all of these different sort of pieces of a team themselves and coordinate everything themselves. And they're the direct center of the communication, but there's no coordination amongst the various team members. And so we wanted to do away with that, where we're really the quarterback or the centerpiece of all the coordination and communication. And we're covering the costs of things like the estate planning, the tax planning and filing. Even having an entire Medicare team on staff where all they do is deal with clients and helping them file for Medicare, get supplement plans when they reach those appropriate ages. So it really is an all-encompassing holistic process.
And speaking of reaching those appropriate ages, we're almost out of time, but I did want to ask you, in this sweet spot age group that you have between 55 and 70, what are maybe the top 3 biggest mistakes people make 10 years before retirement?
Yeah, biggest risk number 1 would be taking too much risk, right? Leaving too much money exposed to market volatility, maybe in the same way that they had been investing for, say, the prior 20 or 30 years while they were in the accumulation phase. So we see that a lot, that people are still invested very much for growth, but they're not necessarily prepared for that kind of distribution phase of life. Taking Social Security too early, right? Just because it's available doesn't mean it's necessarily the best time that we should try to access it. And then I would just say not having a plan in place for how you're going to generate and take income from your portfolio, right? Not knowing where your withdrawals are going to be coming from. Those are sort of the 3 biggest mistakes we see the most often.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can appreciate that as somebody who operates very similarly to you in doing holistic planning. I mean, you see people who are swinging for the fences when they get too late in the game, and instead of dialing back or adjusting their goals and the timeline to reach those goals. So, if somebody's unsure whether they're truly ready to retire, what's the best way for them to get clarity on whether or not that's an option or really their goal?
I think you've got to sit down with somebody who's an expert, and not just a general financial advisor, but somebody who's an expert specifically in retirement planning, right? Who's focused only on people that are going into the same phase of life as what you're going into. I think if you get an opinion from either one or multiple advisors that are specialists in that area, it's going to give you much more clarity on whether you truly are ready and comfortable with retiring, or whether you still may need to stick it out a little bit longer.
Yeah. And the tax planning is such a key part. I think throughout my whole career, my CPA has been like my right-hand person. I don't know what I would have done without that person. So anyway, are there any other last minute suggestions you'd like to share with us here, or anything about your special secret sauce?
No secret sauce. I think for us and our firm, our whole model was built around stripping out some of the unnecessary fluff that there is in the industry, whether it's in the form of kind of big, expensive office spaces or, whatever the case may be, and going more kind of almost the Ally Bank route, where we can do away with a lot of that overhead. And because we're doing away with that overhead and we're operating efficiently with sort of new technology like Zoom, we're able to offer people more value and include more services, and generally do so at a lower cost than a lot of advisory firms. So for the right person who values efficiency over, say, maybe an in-person handshake and sitting across a conference table, we're going to be a good fit. It's not for everybody, but for the value-oriented investor, it absolutely can be.
Awesome. Thank you.
That makes a lot of sense. Very interesting model. and I appreciate you sharing that with us today. So thanks for sharing those insights on retirement planning and your firm. It's a pleasure having you on the
Absolutely.
show. I
Appreciate it.
also want
Thanks
to
for
thank the
having me, guys.
people who work behind the scenes to make the show possible. Be sure to tune into our next episode with Matt Deaver of Scrimmage Online Marketing. And most importantly, we want to thank you for tuning in, our viewers. Until next time, make it a great day.